Come on, living stone. We're gonna go on and on and on. Together we can make it. We're gonna go on and on and on. Come on, living stone.
Knocks it through. Mullen bursting into the box. Josh Mullen.
Together we can make it.
Mullen's ball across, it's turned in! It's Pittman who's got it! Livingston leads!
Road is long.
Now can they get the ball back in? O'Brien.
Lead! And Livingston have the lead!
Man, can score.
If we march to
The full-time whistle blows and David Hayes celebrates! And the Livingston fans join in exultation.
come on, living
Livingston have the lead against Rangers, and they are certainly rising to a few occasions on their return to the top flight in Scotland.
Hello and welcome back to Talk Livi, the podcast dedicated to everything Livingston Football Club and Scottish football, and proudly sponsored by Strana Apparel. My name's Euan and today I'm joined by Angus as always. Angus must be in a little bit better spirits coming into this podcast this week off the back of a fine victory at the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes all the difference, doesn't it? You know, I think any kind of decent performance after the last couple of weeks would have made a massive improvement. But, you know, thankfully, you know, everything was there that we're looking for. So, yeah, very much looking forward to talking about this one this time as opposed to the past few weeks. But very much the same yourself.
Yeah, much better. Feeling much more positive about talking about Livy this week. And shout out to our women's team as well, who got another fine victory on the road, 3-0 away at Greenock Morton as well, which keeps their title push going as well. So well done to the girls on that fantastic performance. But as always, you can find this episode as well as all our others on your preferred podcast streaming site. Just search for Talk Livi, so follow us or subscribe to ensure that you don't miss another episode.
We'll kick the episode off by discussing our victory over St Johnstone as the Lions set up a tense weekend in the race for the top six.
And I caught up with Andy Winton from DUFC Stats ahead of our crucial trip to Tanndice to take on Dundee United.
St Johnstone visited West Lothian with the Lions needing to win to keep their top six hopes alive. First half goals from Joel Newbley and Stephen Kelly would seal a 2-0 victory in a much improved performance. Euan, yeah, as we kind of touched on there, much improved. Result was very crucial. Just a good weekend all round for us.
Yeah, very good. Add to that, the community giveaway with the tickets had the crowd up at around about 4,000 at the weekend, which was really good. It's always nice to see a few of the stands filled a bit more padded out with home fans, so that was very good to see as well. But they got a win. Angus, we broke the curse of the community giveaway. We finally won a game when we've given away tickets to the community and the clubs and schools around about West Lothian. So that's a bonus as well. But we've kind of started the last couple of weeks talking about shape and changing systems. It was another changing system, but I think a changing system that most fans were looking for, which was going back to a back four. We spoke about it in the preview, wanted to see guys like Morgan Boyes back in, Christian Montano, they were back in the back four. We also floated the idea that we played a 4-2-3-1 up at McDermott Park, which was very effective when we went there and won early in the season. It seemed to be that we set up that way with Jason Holt, Andrew Shinney playing as the two sitting players, Stephen Kelly playing a little bit further forward as that number 10, and it certainly made a massive difference, didn't it? We looked a lot more comfortable playing like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Just from the get-go, you know, the comfort and, you know, just players playing in the natural positions again, just it does make a massive difference. You can just see, I think Davey was talking about going back to basics, and that's essentially what it was, just going back to what we know, going back to, you know, players just doing as, you know, they normally would, not try to overcomplicate or, you know, over tactical be in terms against like a team like this, which, you know, I think I don't know if like the hand was kind of forced because of obviously what happened the last couple of weeks, but kind of makes it a wee bit frustrating that, you know, we've not been seeing this a wee bit more so, but it is what it is. The most important thing is that we bounce back with a good result.
Yeah, exactly. I think it was quite evident even just 5 minutes into the game, how much more comfortable we looked in our setup at the weekend. I did find it quite interesting seeing Andrew Shinnie playing a little bit deeper, and I thought he had a very effective game sitting with Jason Holt. I thought they dictated quite a lot of the first half in terms of recycling of the ball and regaining possession. I have to say, this kind of second half of the season, I've seen a bit of a side to Andrew Shinnie I didn't think he had, which was that aggressiveness in the middle of the park at times, and he showed that again playing in that deeper role. So could be something to look at going into the tail end of the season with Andrew Shinnie. But yeah, I thought we started the game very well, and there was a couple of little things I noticed we've clearly worked on. I think we were maybe trying to target Dre Wright at fullback. As much as we bigged up St Johnstone playing notoriously a back five, they actually played a back four at the weekend. We were joking with a couple of St Johnstone fans in the stadium bar about that. But we seemed to target Dre Wright occasionally with that ball over the top, and we got a little bit of joy from that early doors. Stephen Bradley had one, had a bit of a snapshot, which he dragged wide. That was kind of a warning shot for St Johnstone, and Newbley had an opportunity as well. I think he probably should do a little bit better with the lob. Remy Matthews has made a save from it. And there was another one where Newbley's played a ball in behind Dre Wright and Bradley's rounded the keeper. Unfortunately, there's nowhere there for his cross. And the only real opportunity St Johnstone had in the first half was a header for Conor McLennan, which Shamal George has made a pretty comfortable save from. But we did go and take the lead. We also talked about bringing Bruce Anderson back into the starting 11. He played up top, and I know he might not have got his goal, but I thought he had a fantastic performance at the weekend and had big involvement in both goals. Newbley's goal, it's initially Stephen Kelly's kind of hooked the ball on. Bruce has brought it down. He's played a great little reverse ball in behind, and Newbley's taken a couple of really good touches and whipped it round Remy Matthews into the back of the net, and it gave us that little bit of confidence, I think, and we continued to grow into the game from there. And we had an opportunity where Bradley's had a goal chopped off for offside. Unfortunately, Bruce is adjudged to be offside in the build-up to that. But then we've got the second goal, and what a stunning free kick from Stephen Kelly it was. Flips off the inside of the post. But once again, it was Bruce Anderson that won the foul near the edge of the box for that. And we've seen a couple of free kicks this season, which is a bit of a rarity given I'm trying to think of the previous free kicks that we had scored. I think Josh Mullen away at Hamilton in the COVID season, Keegan Jacobs with a free kick at Motherwell, and I struggle to think of a free kick kind of prior to that. So we've had two in one season, which is a wee bit of a bonus, but it was thoroughly enough. It was both Stephen Bradley and Stephen Kelly standing over that one, but a stunning strike from Stephen Kelly, and I thought he deserved that for his performance in the game as well. I thought he was excellent playing in that number 10 role. Second half, you kind of half expected St Johnstone to maybe offer a little bit more, given that they're a couple of goals down. They're in a precarious position in the league, and they did have a couple of opportunities. There was one that was cut back to Graham Carey, which he's blazed over the bar on his weak foot. Albeit, I think we still offered a really good threat in the second half and had a couple of opportunities of our own. Some great build-up play. Montano's taken a heavy touch, ran the ball out of play. Anderson's also had one which has been cut back to him. He's not really connected with. And as I say, St Johnstone had a couple of opportunities as the game wore on, and they were kind of piling bodies into the box, throwing balls into the box. Halberg had a strike at the edge of the box, goes just wide. Carey had one which Morgan Boys defended really well, and Dre Wright's had a header late on. But as you say, the performance was one thing we needed after the last couple of weeks, but to get the result to go with it is even better, and it gives us something to play for going to Tanndice. So, granted, we need snookers essentially, to use a little pun given it's the Snooker World Championships this week, but we're needing snookers to try and get into the top six, but you never know what can happen in football, and we just need to go to Tannadice using the positivity that we've gained from this really good performance on Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. Massive weekend ahead for us. The drama that's going to be coming with it isn't going to be good for us. Obviously, we were in the stage last season where we had it basically in our hands and threw it away. Who knows, maybe we might be in for some luck this time where, our teams do us a favour and we can creep back in there. But again, though, we've got to go and do our own business. And it's just, I think in that kind of way, it's just vitally important that we've gave a performance like this. We've not just won, we've won pretty convincingly. We've won playing really, really well, and we've won getting our best players back on the park. Bruce Anderson was absolutely tremendous coming back, and it just kind of highlights, the more of the kind of the frustration that, we've not kind of seen more of that so much this season. I mean, I did a little bit of digging following the game just out of curiosity, seeing, how often, Anderson and Newblade had actually played. And it's only, 16 starts for Anderson, 8 of them were when Newblade wasn't available as well. So they've only actually started 8 games out of the 32, which, you even just double that. What could have maybe happened to you? And you look at it where, we're not actually that far off of the teams who are even in, fourth and third place, but obviously we don't know what's kind of happened. I don't know about fitness issues and stuff like that, but this season kind of seems like another one that could end up being like what could have been in that regard when we've had, two very, very prominent forward players. But, we've got them for this last game before the split. Let's hope it makes a difference there. The team as a whole, much, much better in the midfield. Jason Holt getting man of the match, buzzing about, an absolutely tremendous performance from him. The defence, weren't taking any risks. I think there was maybe a couple of occasions you could maybe say that they were maybe going a wee bit too long ball at times or a bit of rushing, but I think that there was maybe a message to be like, let's not fanny about with it too much at the back. Let's just kind of go and try and put the other team under pressure. Let's get the ball into their final third and feed off the scraps, which had worked well. Anderson was continuously buzzing about, giving the likes of McGowan and Gordon like a tough time. I don't think they really got too many clean headers that kind of bounced back into the middle of the park to any of their players. Were getting into their final third and kind of pinning them back. So yeah, just in all aspects, Euan, just very, very, pleasing to see and so much needed. And I'm hoping that is led to a boost in the amount of away supporters who'll be going to Tanndice this Saturday.
Yeah, exactly. As you say, I know you're a big advocate of players playing in natural positions. You don't want to almost put square pegs in round holes. But what did you make of that probably slight tweak in shape from what we see for the majority of the last couple of seasons in terms of playing Shinnie and Holt as those two sitting players? What was your kind of take on that?
As you said earlier, like Shinnie showed a wee bit more in these kind of roles. Obviously, he joined, and most people have known him as, maybe like an attacking midfielder, and then obviously started playing up front for us. To see him kind of using, more of his kind of game intelligence as being an interesting one, and the performances have backed it up, so you don't really have too many qualms about it. I think we've kind of talked about this a few times with the midfield options that, in all honesty, we've got, 6 good options who could go in there. And I think any combination of them could do well. I don't know if there's maybe just a wee bit of, like Shinnie, who's been kind of in and out of the team, maybe a wee bit of a prolonged kind of run, kind of maybe starting in that kind of role has maybe helped him in that way, and building up that little bit of a partnership. Because I think that, Stephen Kelly's probably the one who's going to be looking to be the one linking up with the forward players. I think Shinnie's maybe got like a better range of passing and maybe a bit better control, composure in the middle to, not always just kind of be in that kind of battling mode. He can, mix it up a little bit. He can get the ball spread out, kind of use that kind of game intelligence. So, yeah, good to see again players kind of adapting, to a different kind of role in the centre of the park. But yeah, one that's turned out pretty well for us, I would say.
I think it's quite a balanced combination with Shinnie and Holt as that kind of anchoring pair in the middle of the park. Holt's probably that one that goes and wins the ball, just knocks it on and kind of breaks the game up a little bit. Shinnie's very good in that. It's one compliment I've always given Andrew Shinnie is his game intelligence is very good. And I noticed that on Saturday again. He notices when to go and win a foul, or when to give away a foul, or when to knock the ball on, when to try and hold on to the ball, regain possession and hold on to it. And he's very good at that. But I also think it probably put Stephen Kelly into what I would say is his most natural position, which is as a number 10, breaking forward, breaking lines. And Davy Martindale was fully praised for that front four, which was Newbley, Kelly and Bradley in behind Bruce Anderson. And I thought they caused no end of problems, that front four. And it's something I was quite excited watching. And I'd like to see that possibly going forward as well, because I think you've got, as you talked about, you've got 4 players playing in their natural positions where I think they could cause teams a lot of problems.
Yeah, and I think that's at the end of the day, things aren't going well in that. I think you'd rather see, some of these players, maybe a wee bit more of the flair players going out and, at least trying something rather than it just being absolutely turgid to watch. Thankfully, obviously, it's came off this weekend as well. But going forward, I just don't see any changes that should be made to that kind of front three. Obviously, in the summer, we may be looking to bring in like more recruits and that, but at this moment in time, like that should be, what we are expecting for the foreseeable, just because of, the way that they've all played together, and that obviously I think they're managing Bradley's kind of game time because obviously he's still kind of young, but this is the kind of ideal time, if we end up having five meaningless or so games, well, not meaningless, like like where you finish in the table still matters in terms of money and all of that, but it's best to get that kind of fire in, ahead of next season and that as well, so we can be in a healthy position for when, the 2024 season kicks off. And I think that's maybe like an issue that's maybe plagued us a little bit, is that kind of constantly switching up in there, not having that fluidity. I know we've got more points than we did last season, but I don't know, it just doesn't feel as if we've had that fluidity throughout most of the campaign. I'm just hoping that it's not going to be too little too late for us, but we'll see what happens on Saturday, and hopefully we'll get and see more of this.
Yeah, you mentioned as well there about Anderson and Newbley being on the park at the same time. It's something, again, we've spoke about quite a lot on the podcast this season, and that we've first half of the season really struggled to get that combination on the park at the same time. And I actually saw a former host of this podcast tweeted something earlier in the week, and it was Livi's record when they've won 7, drawn 2, lost 2. Newbley's got 4 goals, 1 assist, Anderson 5 goals, 2 assists. So it shows you how deadly a duo they are when they can be on the park at the same time. And hopefully between now and the end of the season, whether that be finishing in the top half or finishing in the bottom 6, regardless, I'd like to see the pair of them on the park as much as possible, because Bruce is under contract next season, Noobs is under contract next season. That doesn't necessarily mean they'll be here next season, because the club might get an offer come in for either of them. But you want to be building up that partnership as much as you can going into the new campaign, with the thought process of being able to have the 2 players available. So it was good to have both of them on the park. But I have to give a big shout out to Bruce Anderson, because I thought he was terrific at the weekend, as I said earlier on. But he's a player that I'm desperate for him to get a goal, because I think if he gets 1 goal, he'll score 2 or 3 more before the end of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've all obviously been talking about like where's Anderson been and all of that, and I think that performance just showed it. Not even just the work on the ball, it was just the hassling and harrying, and it made so much of a difference as having that up front. Obviously, when Newbley goes up there, he's not as much of that kind of threat. He wants to get the ball into him. Anderson is just a kind of free runner and looks to if the ball's going in behind, he's not going to give the centre defender any peace at all. And that alone was just incredibly encouraging and much more helpful to the way that we were playing, and helped us get up the park. And it's something that we've, it feels as if it's been like a really, really long time since we've seen that. But yeah, great to see him back, and I completely agree. A couple of goals will only help him as well. And, hopefully that happens this Saturday.
Davey spoke about in great detail about Bruce over the last couple of seasons, and that he knows Bruce will score goals. If given enough opportunities, it will get us goals. But as Davey kind of put it in his post-match, he was talking about how a Livingston striker is not going to score goals in every game. They might get 1 every 4. So what are you doing in those other 3 games to help the team out? And I think that's maybe been his criticism of Bruce, albeit I think that side of Bruce's game has come on leaps and bounds over the last couple of years. But at the weekend there, that's what Bruce can offer, and he's capable of it. We saw it early in the season. I know he scored in the particular game, but Kilmarnock on the Friday night, he's hassling and harrying for the 3rd goal. That's what you need from your Livingston number 9, as well as hopefully chipping in with reaching double figures in goals each season. And that performance from Bruce, I thought, was quite a complete number 9's performance. But there was a little bit after the game, not Livingston related, but it was Callum Davidson was sacked. The irony that Callum Davidson, arguably one of his highest points as St Johnstone manager, came against us, and then his lowest point has probably come against us as well. What was kind of your thoughts on Callum Davidson losing his job?
I'm not surprised, in all honesty. Being on Twitter and stuff like that, following like a lot of kind of St Johnstone fans, and seeing what their thoughts are, seeing how bad their record were. I think there's a lot of people, it's a classic Scottish football thing, Euan, where fans of other teams and that who don't really pay much attention, they look at them winning, the 2 cup competitions, and then they just lambast it and say, "Oh, that's absolutely shocking that they've done this." But like I've seen that something like they've only won something like, I don't know if it was like home games or something like that. It was like 36 games. They've not won like double figures of that or something like that over like the last 2 seasons. two relegation battles. It's just kind of regressing. I think it's in a kind of a harsh way, maybe that, again, you're looking at their budget. I would probably imagine St Johnstone have maybe the 10th lowest budget in the league.
I would put them in. I would put them in that bracket, certainly, kind of the bottom three in terms of our budget.
Yeah. But sitting in ninth maybe isn't too bad because of that. I think at the same time, though, it's the manner of it. They're very turgid to watch. They don't really score too many goals. I think they have made an improvement on it this season, but they've lost that kind of solidity as well. And it all just kind of screams that the shelf life of the manager at this club at this time is unfortunately came to an end. I don't really see too many actual St Johnstone fans saying that it's the wrong decision that they've made. So I think I would trust them in saying that maybe something like has come up there. This season's been a blessing for them in a way that the likes of Dundee United have been poor enough in that there's another team below them. If that wasn't the case, they'd maybe be in real danger. And I think hard to argue with it. Not really too many encouraging signs. The recruitment's really not been there. I think they splashed a wee bit more money on some of these players as well. They got money for likes of McCann and like Kerr and stuff like that, and I don't think it's been well reinvested back into the team. But yeah, it's always sad to see a manager lose a job, especially somebody who was, quite up and coming, had made a great name for himself very early in his career. Makes you wonder where, they're kind of go there. But yeah, I'm really, really not shocked at all. Are you taken aback by it at all?
To be honest, I'm delighted he's been sacked because he made me cry. He made me cry after that League Cup final. So screw you, Callum Davidson. I'm delighted you've lost your job. No, to be honest, I kind of agree with what you said there. Certainly St Johnstone fans I know that I go to Scotland trips with and stuff like that are very much of the opinion that it was probably the right decision. He'll always be St Johnstone's greatest ever manager for that cup double and qualifying for Europe in one season, because the chances of that happening at a club like St Johnstone again is near on impossible in Scottish football. So he'll always be a god there. I think he was their record sale as well when he was a player at St Johnstone, and I'm sure I could be corrected, but I thought he was on the backroom staff at one point, possibly when they won the cup in 2014. So, he's been involved in the most successful periods in St Johnstone's history. So, but as you say, the two seasons that have followed that, it's a massive decline. And even looking at this season, they won the cup. I saw a couple of stats on Twitter. They averaged 0.47 goals per game at home. There's 9 goals they scored or something like that at home all season in their cup winning season in the league, which is which is appalling. And as you say, the last couple of seasons finishing 11th last year. In hindsight, I think Davidson probably should have left after keeping them up last year. We've on some sort of high, and this season they've kind of fallen like a stone since the World Cup break, and you can't really argue it. One thing you could maybe argue is the fact that he was in this position last year. So do you keep him till the end of the season and then look to make a change in the summer? But obviously you've seen changes happening elsewhere in the league, and I think that's probably what sparked St Johnstone to do that. But to go back onto Livi, Dundee United at the weekend at Tanndice, set up to be quite an exciting one. Can we create some more fantastic memories up in Dundee?
These situations never really turn out well for us, do they? But Euan, I'm not going to lie to you. I've already began tampering with fate. I've put a double on for Hibs and St Mirren to win. Hopefully, I've not won a coupon all season. Let's hope that continues for this Saturday. And I don't. It's a strange one to be going into. We're going to be having to keep an eye on our game whilst constantly refreshing our phones to see whatever results are happening. And that Hibs are obviously away to St Johnstone, which we've just watched them play, and it's not really inspired with much confidence that St Johnstone are going to go and do something. Hibs have struggled there in the past. New manager bounce perhaps could be something that happens there. Maybe that could do us a favour.
I think that makes that game more intriguing now. I think beforehand, after obviously Hibs winning the derby, you kind of sit and go, they'll be on a massive high going into that game. But as you say, with that change of manager, from our perspective, it maybe adds a little bit more hope.
And obviously you got the St Mirren Kilmarnock game, and I don't know if you watched the Kilmarnock game on Sunday against Celtic, but I don't think that inspires me much more either. St Mirren are obviously getting a near sellout crowd as well for it. But who knows? Stranger things have happened in football. We've just got to hope that somebody can bail us out. One of these teams, please. But obviously, we have to take care of business ourselves. The worst thing would be if one of these teams was to do us a favour and us not to take care of business ourselves. So at the end of the day, we've just got to focus on our own performance, and then hopefully something falls into place for us.
Yeah, that's the thing. The scenario is simple in our perspective, that it's win or bust. We need to go to Tanndice and get a result. I was reading comments on the forum and folk talking about us needing to go all out attack because we need to win the game. But I think there's a degree that would be a little bit foolish, because that probably plays into Dundee United's hands, being the home side. I think they would want the game to be a little bit more open. They can play on the counter a little bit more as well, which they did quite effectively in the second half at our place back in March. So you need to be wary. There'll be a game plan. I think we need to be positive and on the front foot, but we need to also be careful, because Dundee United come into this game and they need to go and win it. They're in a position where they need as many points as possible to try and stay in the league next season. So we can't go too gun-ho, and I'm sure Davey won't go too gun-ho, but I'm also sure that he'll know exactly what's going on elsewhere. If the game's sitting finely poised at level after an hour and you see a result coming in elsewhere, I think the management team will be well aware of that, and will probably get instructions onto the park as well to try and go for it a little bit more. So it's finely poised this last week of the season, but at least we're going into it with something to play for. I'm guessing you would probably look at playing pretty much the same 11 as the St Johnstone game for that one.
Yeah, no real reason to change anything. I don't see any reason as to why we would mix anything up after that. Hopefully, similar kind of performance, similar team, and we can continue to keep up what we were doing on Saturday just there. I guess maybe if anything, you're talking about the midfield, but nobody deserves to come out of the team following that performance. So yeah, I guess the players, I think they talk about it a lot, that there's a way to play yourself into the team. I think everybody there is just showing that they deserve to be in that spot. Barring any injuries or fitness issues, I think that's what you've got to go for.
So what, you going prediction then, Angus?
It's going to be dramatic. It's going to be not good for our hearts, Euan. I'm going to go for us to go for a 2-1 win.
I was going to go 2-1 as well. I was going to go 2-1. Go up there, do our bit of the job, and let's pray for a miracle in Perth or Paisley. But yeah, I encourage all fans to get up there and support the team. It could be a fantastic day for the supporters if it does go our way. So get up there, let's get a vocal and noisy support up in Tanndice to back the team, because in my opinion they deserve that for their endeavours so far this season. So let's get up to Tanndice in our numbers. We're delighted to have Strana Apparel as sponsors of Talk Livi. UK based with a Swedish soul, we are Strana. Strana is an independent fashion brand from Scotland who create high quality and stylish attire for on and off the terraces. Inspired by terrace culture, lifestyle and music, all their clothing is designed using quality materials and workmanship to combine the very best style and fit. All of this means you get a premium quality fashion at affordable prices while enjoying a simple and secure service.
As a bonus for Talk Livi listeners, you can get 10% off your order using the code TalkLivi at the checkout. We'll also have some exclusive giveaways during the season, so keep your eyes peeled on our socials for those too. And thanks to Strana for sponsoring Talk Livi.
I'm delighted to welcome Andy Winton back on to Talk Livi. Andy, how you doing, mate?
I'm very well, Euan. Thanks for having me back on.
No, it's a pleasure to have you back on, and I'm sure you're probably in a little bit better spirits coming into this podcast and into the game at Tanndice at the weekend.
Yeah, no, well, definitely. It's there's been a turnaround. I think I was quite pleased to avoid you in the immediate aftermath, because I suspect you were probably fairly annoyed as we kind of went away with our Dick Turpin mask and took a point from the Tony Mac about a month or so ago in the freezing cold. But I mean, whilst obviously the first half performance was dreadful that day, I think you could probably see that in the second half, United, made a real game of it, and having been in a difficult position, were able to change the personnel, make an early change for reasons that we might want to discuss in a second, and then actually certainly were as in the game as Livingston in the second half, and if anything, I think it was both teams were not sure whether to stick or twist in the final 10 minutes to try and push to win the game or not. And then since then, the performance levels have been pretty good, and obviously 2 huge wins, because a week past Saturday, when we saw Ross County had won at St Johnstone, that left us 5 behind them, 6 behind Kilmarnock, real trouble. So I was at the game on Saturday, and it was some feeling to get off the bottom of the league psychologically. There's still a lot to be done, right? We're only 1 point off the bottom, but yeah, much better place than we were when we last played.
Yeah, as you kind of mentioned there about the last game, first of all, I'm glad to see you've thawed out from that game, because it was about -2 or 3 whilst the game was being played, so it was a minor miracle that the game finished, to be honest. But yeah, you talked about that first half performance from ourselves, very, very good, and deservedly in front. Arguably should have been further ahead, both in the score sheet and probably in players. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I actually arrived 10 minutes late for that game, because as I said to you, I snuck into the Livi end. I got caught up in traffic, so I came in just as you were scoring your first goal. So I thought, sod this, I'm not going up to see my mate. I'm going to go and hide and get myself something to eat first, right? And get him like a little chocolate bar, and just hopefully we'll not discuss what's been going on. But he was telling me that Livi had been all over United, and I saw the highlights, and of course the shot off the bar prior to the goal, and that continued up until probably around the half-hour point, where, yeah, I mean, completely can see the frustration at Kieran, and I heard it in your subsequent podcast, and you're right insofar as the first tackle, which I missed in real time, is a bricker of a yellow card. In fact, it's probably not quite a red card, but it's in that territory between yellow and red. There's no doubt it's a yellow card. And then the second one, he's got hold of Montano. As you say, Montano's running into a dangerous area. I actually looked it back before the podcast. The only thing I can think of, as I said, it was only a second foul of the game. It was quite early in the game. He's actually maybe just let go of Montano, and then Montano's maybe realised who it is and that he's been fouled, and so goes down. But I mean, there's no doubt I'd be absolutely fuming at that decision if the shoe was on the other foot. And yeah, we got a break, and the proof was that Jim Goodwin subbed him like 2 minutes later for Liam Smith, which you'll be pleased to hear for Saturday. Liam Smith is injured, so we don't really have an option there. So I'm not quite sure how we're going to counter the kind of Nubly, completely destroying Kieran Freeman in the first half hour. But yeah, he went off. We were jammy. We actually could have got out at halftime at 1-1, because Anaku, the guy who had suggested
missed a sitter at the back post,
absolute sitter, in between all the fouls, as you quite rightly pointed out, he committed, because as I said, Freeman committed 2 fouls and probably should have been booked for both. Anaku committed 5 and finally got booked for the last one, but he's just not a footballer. He's pacing. He's not really been seen in the team since, and I think it's unlikely to be involved again. And yeah, the second half, again, I think I thought we were good in the second half in terms of our play, fortunate to get him with 11 players. And actually, in the balance of playing the second half, I think, we're worthy of the goal when we got it. I think the goal was probably coming. And then you guys had a couple of chances, obviously. And I felt, as I said, neither side was sure whether to stick or twist. But Aina, I can understand. I thought it was interesting Martindale actually focused on that more, because I think it is a red card. Don't get me wrong. He's followed through, and particularly when you see Shinnie sent off the other night, Ryan Edwards at Tynecastle, and it was whole to think for you guys at Easter Road. It's just kind of, to be honest, it's actually worse than that. He misses the ball. He doesn't get anything on the ball. So actually it's worse than those, but it's a dangerous tackle on Pittman. But at that point it was 1-1. There was 25 minutes to go. So I think the more game-changing decisions, the Freeman one, because you were 1-0 up in the ascendancy, and if we'd had to have more than an hour with 10 men, then that's a real difficulty to see how we get anything out of the game. 25 minutes left, maybe we might have been able to hang on. I actually looked in the last minute, because I thought Montano had maybe handed the ball and we could have actually stolen all 3 points, but unfortunately there wasn't any kind of conclusive footage. They only showed one angle of that, and at the game you might remember they announced a VAR check, and I got all excited only for the VAR check to be for the Scott McMahon red card, as you guys broke up the pitch, which I don't think was a red card. No, it wasn't given. But no, I mean, for you guys, I totally understand why you were frustrated at not taking 3 points. Particularly as matters have developed for you since, there's a real opportunity, and you were strong arguments. You had more of the ball, totally dominated the first half hour of play. But from our point of view, yes, we rode our luck with 2 big refereeing decisions, but for the the team that has been so mentally weak to be able to dig themselves out, and on the balance of play in the second half, if you take out the Aina decision, to really be involved in the second half and probably, there's an argument we're worthy of the point on that basis of the performance in the second half. That was pleasing, and it was pleasing the way that he intervened, seeing that Freeman was getting torn to shreds by Newbley and made that decision. So that was good in-game management, which I don't think Liam Fox, for instance, would have made.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. Dundee United's second half performance was a lot better, and at the time of the equaliser, as you say, probably merited in terms of the balance of play at that point in the game. But there was obviously a few decisions which us Livingston fans find slightly contentious. But since then, it's 1 defeat and 5 for you guys, 2 draws, 2 wins in amongst that as well. Are things starting to turn a corner under Jim Goodwin?
Yeah, I think definitely the proof's in the fact that we've got the results. I did laugh when you said you in the following podcast from the United game, said these things don't even themselves out, and then the next game, I don't know if you saw, but United probably should have had a penalty when United played St Mirren, and St Mirren got a very, very soft penalty when it looked as if there was nothing in it. But all 3 of the bottom sides that day seemed to get done over, because there was possibly an argument actually that you could have had Shamal George in a bit of trouble against County in the game that you won, and then Kilmarnock, I think, had the worst of the lot because Andy Considine literally punched the ball in the St Johnstone game. So it didn't make any effect in the fact that all the bottom 3 sides had a bit of difficulty there. But since then, the St Mirren game, we dropped points, but to a soft decision, lost it against Rangers. And it was weird. March was quite a long month with the international break and not actually having, the games. And I guess it's similar after the game at the weekend. There's another break for the Scottish Cup semi. But yeah, to really guts out the 2 wins that we've done. And it's a way, I think, that we've won those 2 games.
As you say, a last minute winner and then coming from behind as well shows a bit of character, doesn't it?
Exactly. That it's a manner of the victories as much as winning those games as anything, as you say, because a last minute winner, we were maybe a little bit fortunate to get that penalty, to be honest, as well against Hibs. But I think Fletcher's probably clever and the Hibs guy dives in. And yeah, at the weekend I was there, and at halftime, really looked in trouble, and we were able to turn it around. We're able to turn it around in terms of the performance and also in terms of the substitutions. We went to 1-1 at Saturday, and we took Kieran Freeman off again. Maybe we should just not start him if we're taking him off. Things are getting better, right? Play him exactly. And we brought in a young striker and went for it, which I thought at 1-1 was a really bold move, because although the 3 points got us off the bottom of the league, a point was going to be a useful result for us at the weekend anyway. But we actually kind of could see that we'd started the second half well, and Goodwin went for it. And that, as a fan, you always love to see, right? Because fans always want to see attacking substitutions. That wasn't an attacking substitution. And so we went for it. And so, yeah, things have turned around. He's had to contend with a couple of injuries. Dylan Levitt was a surprise omission against you guys, but it turns out he's injured and is likely to miss the remainder of the season. Peter Pollitt has been back and got his next injury, as he seems to be permanently injured these days since we last played you. And it looks like the game at the weekend will come too soon for Glenn Middleton, which is frustrating because these are guys that would be useful. And Liam Smith has dropped out at right centre back. The only change I think we might have for the weekend is if we do play the 2 up front. So along with Stephen Fletcher, a young striker called Rory McLeod, the team that finished the game against Motherwell, and don't play Freeman because of the history against Newbley, you might see a guy called Niskanen who scored our first goal playing at right wing back. But I think if that is the case, and I think you guys have the opportunity to exploit that, because Niskanen is a guy similar to the way I described Anaku last time, a player with much pace but not much end product. Yes, he scored the goal at the weekend, but he's missed a couple of real chances for us, and he works really hard, but he's not a particularly good player. So I think you might get a bit of joy. And I was pleased, actually. At first, I wasn't sure whether I was pleased with you guys getting that result against St Johnstone at the weekend, because I thought, right, if you've got nothing to play for, that could be good. But actually, I've convinced myself that it's a good thing, because looking at the table, a draw is of absolutely no value to you. I mean, yes, you might think, Martindale might be aware of the prize money finishing 7th down the line, but Motherwell are actually even playing at Celtic, so you're 6 quid of them already going into the game. So a draw is of virtually no use. So if results are in the balance elsewhere at the 75th minute on Saturday, I don't know if you'd know better than me, is Davy Martindale going to go full Jimmy Calderwood mode and go kind of 2-4-4, sound the bugles and kind of go for it? Because a draw is of no use to you at that point, right? So he'd be as well risking losing the game to try and win the game, which might create opportunities for United in the last 15 minutes if our game is tight.
Yeah, as you say, it's win or bust for us. Yeah. So it's a pretty simple scenario we've got and just need to rely on something else elsewhere. But as you say, the last couple of games have seen a massive upturn in that kind of psychological aspect of getting off the bottom of the table as well after back-to-back wins against Hibs and Motherwell. Is it safe to say the mood's a lot more positive going into these split fixtures where it is kind of head-to-heads, which makes that tail end of the season quite exciting?
Yeah, massively.
Or nervy, probably nervy.
Well, yeah, nervy. Yeah, I mean, nervy. First, I got to go on the redone Sports Sound, and Kenny McIntyre invited me on at the weekend, and I described our fixture as the easier game at the weekend. And I've got a pal I mentioned before, is a Livingston man. He was straight on me going, I hope that Davy Martindale pins that comment up on the wall. You saying it's the easier game than County and Kelly have been away from home.
I'll clip that clip as well.
You can clip that today, exactly. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's pretty bold considering I think you've won 4 of your last 5 at Tanndice, and Tanndice has been a good hunting ground, as you'll be well aware, recently for you guys. So, I'm aware it's a tough game, and a game where you'll be massively incentivized if there's any sniff of results elsewhere. I mean, I'm not even sure much that affects it because, there could be movement elsewhere. I think Martindale just have to go to try and win the game. But the mood amongst the United support, we had a big away support at Motherwell. Obviously, when you come from behind to win, there's no better feeling in a away day. It's sunny, you come from behind to win. It was just, really an enjoyable day out. And yeah, I think the support are you when you've had a season that's been so bad, I don't know if it's maybe similar to the way you guys finished your Challenge Cup winning season, and had that push in the league as well. It's almost like when things are bad, you then really hold on to that one good result, and then another good result comes and a bit of momentum can build. And I'm hoping that happens. We've certainly had 2 in a row, but I would say the mood amongst the support is as high as it's been since the end of last season when we secured 4th. I certainly felt it full time on Saturday, and you would like to hope that the players can build on it. And as you say, after the split, we're actually due to get Ross County and Kilmarnock, essentially our 2 direct competitors, at Tanndice, so that's an advantage. We're only scheduled to have 2 home games. We might be back at the Tony Macaroni Arena. Who knows? Hopefully not, for you guys' sake. But we're scheduled to have our 2 competitors at home, so that gives us a chance of hopefully digging our way out of it.
You mentioned there, Andy, as well about kind of selection in terms of players who might not be available for the game. Just kind of touching on anything that's changed since Jim Goodwin. I know he's not been in the hot seat particularly long, but has he changed anything in terms of how you guys set up at all?
Well, he's not playing Mulgrew and Edwards together, because when I said last time we played as 3-5-2 and only one of them really works as the anchor, and there's an argument that neither of them work at the anchor, to be honest, because Edwards was a complete bomb scare against Aberdeen and Mulgrew is pretty sketchy, I would say. He was good for us last season, but he's on his last legs as a professional kind of footballer. Made the error for the Hibs goal, and he's got a kind of mistake in him. And as you've probably seen at games at the Tony Mac before, he's got a kind of shoot on sight policy. He still fancies a kind of long shot type thing. The guy Aina who made the rash challenge at in our previous meeting has actually developed into quite a good player. He's playing on the right of the back three, and that's helped, because prior to that we'd not been doing well. And we've had kind of players step up. McGrath's done a little bit better, and Aziz Spiek, the guy that got the equaliser at when we last played, the Australian who waltzed through the Argentinian team at one point in the World Cup, if you watched that, which was totally bizarre to see. The kind of SPFL select that was Australia, right? He's been a good player as well. And I think Stephen Fletcher's going through a bit of a purple patch as well, not just in terms of goals, but in terms of being able to bring others into play. So he's not changed a huge amount, but there was comments that we weren't fit enough, and I'd certainly thought that before, and Goodwin actually seems to have hinted at that. It's maybe a bit of an easy excuse when a new manager comes in, but the suggestion was that the team, that they were kind of informed by sports science and didn't want to have them push too hard, but we'd lost a lot of goals late on in games, whereas actually we've now been able to turn round games. Motherwell at the weekend, we were able to come from a losing position and win, and we were able to get turn the Hibs game around when they equalised, and also I suppose get a point against you guys as well, which was good. So in terms of personnel, not a huge amount, but it'll be interesting to see, because I thought we might miss Dylan Levitt, and I thought we might have more of the ball against you guys, but as it turned out, I think you had about 65% of the ball when we last played,
which is unusual for us in the top flight, certainly.
And I was kind of kind of looking at you guys at the weekend and was told that kind of Bradley and Stephen Kelly were really, really good, and Anderson and Newbley up front. So it's going to be interesting to see the matchup on Saturday. I'm going up to the game and I'm really looking forward to it.
So talking about the game, Andy, prediction, what are you thinking?
I'm going to be, I mean, last time I predicted 1-1 and got it right, so I don't want to kind of ruin my 100% record. I don't know, 1-1 obviously doesn't suit you guys at all. I don't think it will be a draw from the point of view that it's got to be win or bust for you guys. So I'm going to be optimistic and say it's bust with a late goal, with you guys pushing for it, and I'll go for a kind of 2-1 United win, the third 2-1 win in a row for United, if it is the case. But yeah, look, it could go either way, and I think it's perhaps unlikely to be a draw from the point of view that I think that Martindale just has to go for it if it's tight in the last 10 minutes, which might suit United. But then again, it might not, insofar as we've got the worst goalkeeper in the league. We've got Mulgrew, who I've pointed out, struggles a bit. We've got Freeman, who Newbley had on toast last time. So if you have 4 guys up front and that shaky combination, that you might win the game if you go for it. So I think it could be 2-1 either way, but I'll go for United.
You've got to back them, regardless of how they're doing.
You've got to what's the point in going? I'm not otherwise, so yeah.
But to do something a little bit different, obviously you're a big stato, Andy. You're on the DUFC Stats account on Twitter. So I thought I'd do something a little bit different and ask you for a player that's been a kind of favourite of yours, that's played for both Dundee United and Livingston, but also one that's maybe not had such fond memories for you. Let's start with a good one first. So which player is kind of gives you good memories that's played for both clubs? Yeah,
so I mean, I had a wee look through the Arab archive, which is a good wee thing where it's got the player connections if anyone wants to have a little look at that. And I found there was 5 players, because I wanted to find players that had played, a good amount of games for both teams rather than maybe just a handful at one side. And there was 5 players that had played at least 50 for both sides. I don't know if you want to hazard a guess at who any of those 5 might be, or
Derek Lilly, I would assume would be one of them.
Absolutely, straight
away. Gary Boland would be another one.
2 out of 5 off the bat.
Try to think who played at least 50 games for both. Craig Easton wouldn't have hit 50. He only had a season.
I was thinking of going for Easton for my player of choice, because he played more than 200 games for United, but he only had 1 season at Livy. But Robbie
Winters would be one.
Robbie Winters.
In the lower divisions as well. Try to think.
I'll let you think of the other 2 then. Well, I'll go for my player if you want. You can come back. I'll give you that. That's impressive to get those off the bat. But and it was a toss up for me between 3 players. It was either going to be Lilly or Craig Easton. I really thought about, because he scored that goal, obviously, that relegated Dundee, which for me, obviously, a great day.
It's not even a Dundee United memory why you love him.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I remember being up at Inverness, because we could have gone down that day as well. All 3 of us could have gone down, and your business advisor Hassan Kashlu passing the ball to our
cracking job he did as well.
Cracking
job as a business advisor.
Really good business advisor. But Easton scored the goal, and there's always that wonderful image of Tam McManus on tears on the pitch, which is a really fantastic image. But that he was a great player for United in an era when I watched him and I thought of him. But I think the player I'd pick is Robbie Winters. As I mentioned before, a pal that's a Livy fan. We went to university in Aberdeen together, and he managed to convince me to go down to watch Livingston play Montrose, with the promise of getting to see Robbie Winters, who was the guy that I'd really enjoyed when I first got into football in the 1990s. He was a great player for United. He scored a lot of goals in the season that we finished 3rd in 1997. He was a fast player at that point, and I was really sad when he went to Aberdeen. But as it turned out, getting £700,000 in Billy Dodds was thought of as a pretty good deal for United, because not bad business, because Billy Dodds did pretty well for us. But Winters, obviously, he actually did okay at Aberdeen, and then went off and won the league in Norway, and then came back to you guys. And so I enjoyed watching him at the end of his career, as you kind of started your progression back up through the leagues. And Winters was because he played until even after you guys, in the juniors with Pollock, I think, until his early 40s. He really looked after himself.
He's only retired very recently. I think he stopped playing. I follow him on Twitter. I know he does a bit of coaching through an East Kilbride, but yeah, Robbie Winters was fantastic for us. He'd been over in Norway, where he's a god over in Norway.
Yeah, well, Brann won it's the only league title they've won in, I think, 60 years when he was there. So yeah, totally.
So he's an absolute god, and he came over at the time we had, thoroughly enough, his brother David Winters, who's played for both clubs as well. And when we got demoted down to third division, and he played as a trialist in a league game over at Berwick, and you could see Robbie, he played for us in the third and second division, but see, his football brain was frightening. He'd obviously maybe didn't have the legs anymore, but
no,
he's 3 or 4 steps ahead of any player that he was playing against at that level.
Yeah.
And, you know, he was very good for us. He was part of a very kind of experienced spine to our team in those couple of seasons. Another couple of Dundee United players that would feature Danny Griffin in that Livy team. He was he's one of them, and Jim Hamilton featured as well in the third division
one of
season.
man of many clubs. Who did he not play? It's easier to say
exactly,
who he didn't play for, right? Yeah. That's right. There was a few ex-Dundee United players in there for sure. But yeah, I really enjoyed Robbie Winters. I'd half been tempted to say Rory Boulding because he scored 1 goal actually, in light of the challenge you've got at the weekend to get into the top 6. We had a game 10 years ago against Aberdeen where it was winner takes all because Kilmarnock were going into the top 6. A draw was no use for either of us. So the last 5 minutes of the game was like a basketball game, and it fell to Rory Bowden, this guy we'd picked up as a free agent, who it was only goal he scored. He only started 3 games for us. I think he pretty much retired when he left us, but I know he was at you guys before. So he's a bit of a cult hero for that single goal for us. But no, my favourite ex-United and Livy player, definitely by a mile, is Robbie Winters.
What about the dud then?
The dud, yeah. I mean, I was trying to think who to go for. Just quickly on the good players, my pal, I messaged him before trying to think of ideas, and he suggested a guy, a blast in the past, called Maureen O'Keefe, and I thought I remember that name and looked at it, and he'd made 5 substitute appearances for Dundee United, so I thought I don't think I can stretch. I think I'd been to one. It was like a game where United won 8-0, but I thought I'm going to struggle to talk about a 10-minute substitute appearance that I saw 28 years ago v Dumbarton, so I thought I can't name him as a start. It's probably not fair to name him as a dud either, but in terms of the dud, I mean, I thought I could be really controversial. In some respects, I didn't think Bullock was good at us. I thought I could be really controversial and go for what I assume is one of your heroes. And Fernandez wasn't great at United in the spell that he had there. Lee Miller wasn't great at the spell he has. I know. But I'm not going to be that careless because Fernandez was okay. And he didn't quite hit the heights I think that we'd hoped that he would. But I think that the obvious dud for United would be Col Donaldson. Col obviously started a few guys at Rio, thought of as a bright star and went down to QPR. I don't know if that went to his head, but when he came up to United in the kind of system that Jackie McNamara had of signing young players, because he took a cut of the transfer fees if he signed them on, so he tried to have a kind of model of having young players. Donaldson was in our team that had finished top 6 8 years in a row and spectacularly managed to get relegated in the first season he played, and then when we went down to the Championship, he actually was dropped for a bit, and then he came on in a game against St Mirren. And I think it was quite funny because we were going for a record of the longest clean sheet record. I think it was like the longest amount of time without conceding a goal, and we were like 2 minutes away from it. Donaldson just came on and basically just fell on the ground, and the Samaritan guy took it off him and ran and scored, which I thought the whole crowd went completely mental at him. I thought it was quite funny because I didn't really like Cammy Bell and goals, so it was quite funny that he lost his clean sheet record over that, and we ended up winning the game anyway. But Donaldson he referred to the place as being toxic when he left, and then when Cali Thistle put us out the cup, he was basically giving it the big licks, which is fair enough. He'd got booed the entire game, but equally when we had the playoff game against Cali, just the season that we lost, not the season we played you guys, but the season after, we won 3-0 in the playoff semi-final, which was a great day. And Donaldson you've got a small stand at Tanndice called the Shed, where you guys were, of course, when you had that playoff win. But Donaldson put a shot over the Shed, and the whole ground giving kind of donkey noises, and just the sheer delight of being 3-0 up, and then your pantomime villain just rocketing a shot out the ground was just delightful. So yeah, Donaldson's definitely my dud of choice for United Livy.
Yeah, Cole Donaldson, he was really promising young player when he came through with us. You could tell he was the more modern day type of centre-back and that he wanted to play out on the ball, but you just always thought he had a little mistake in there and the opportunity to overplay. But at the time, you kind of forgive that with being a young player, and he'll get those mistakes out of him, and almost think he moved on too early. And I think that's probably a problem with a lot of young players, is they end up moving on too early. With Dundee United as an example, Scott Allen probably is one of those players that disappeared for a number of years after moving down. Was it West Brom he moved down to? So
yeah, he moved down to West Brom. I don't know how many games Scott Allen's actually played. For the amount of hype around him, I don't know how many games he's actually started in his career. I bet it's probably like less than like 100, 150, maybe a bit more. But like, yeah, it's incredible. But yeah, as you say,
I think Cole Donaldson was one of those. He'd really only had a half full season playing regularly for us and then got that big move down to QPR. I think Harry Redknapp was manager at QPR.
I think that's right. Yeah.
If memory serves me right.
It was a big move for him, obviously, and look, he came up and I think it was unfortunate for him because he came in he was thrown in by McNamara as a young centre half alongside another youngish centre half with a young goalkeeper behind him, and with fans that had unreasonably high expectations probably at the time because we'd had 8 seasons of top 6, no real strong Rangers, Hearts and Hibs a total mess, and so United were able to kind of regularly finish in the top half of the league, and then it all fell apart, and he was kind of seen as kind of part of that, and he didn't take it well, which of course if you don't take it well, adds to the when you move and then give it big licks, you're always going to kind of after that, every time you lose a game, it's going to be noised up by the supporters. So yeah, he's, as you say, I think he used to overplay part of the time. He was obviously a comfortable guy in the ball, but it is interesting his career's ended up. He's at Falkirk now, I guess, so who knows, maybe he'll be playing Europa League group stage football with Falkirk next season when they're in League One and playing in the I would like that. I'd find that pretty funny if they could win the cup and do that, but I think it's unlikely. It
would be hilarious, to be fair, if that's who ended up winning the cup, wouldn't it? But no, Andy, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast again, and best of luck for the rest of the season as well.
Yeah, in fact, just before I go, do you want to try and name those last final 2 out of 5, having picked up Boland, Lilly and Winters, I think were the 2 you've got?
I don't feel like Fernandez would have hit 50.
Nah, it was only 1 season.
I don't think... Would Lee Miller have hit 50 appearances for you?
No, it's close as well, yeah, but no, he didn't for either. He was just shy.
I was thinking Danny Griffin.
He's close, but he's
18
only
months for us, so he might have just...
He was just shy. No, we've got Sparky McNulty.
The McNulty played 50 games for you, right?
He played 54 games for United, and more than 100 for you guys. And I saw him score that goal at Montrose when I went down to see Winter. I think it was his first professional goal when you won Halloween. We were all dressed up, and that was his first goal. And the other one was Paul Watson.
Paul Watson. So it was Paul Watson.
There's number 5. Anyway, thanks. Anyway, sorry for. I suspect that kind of niche kind of content's maybe not for all your listeners, but yeah, thanks very much for having me on. And I wouldn't say good luck on Saturday, but I hope it's a good game.
That's it for this week's episode of Talk Livi. Thanks again to every single one of you for tuning in week in and week out. If you can, we'd love to hear your feedback. Either leave us a review on iTunes or simply message us on Twitter, Facebook or Instagram.
As Angus said, we're on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, so search Talk Livi to find us, and you'll find all the links to our weekly episodes on there as well. You can also find all our episodes, including this one, on all good podcast streaming sites, including iTunes and Spotify. We're also on YouTube, so don't forget to subscribe to the channel. None of those options suit you though. All you have to do is head to our website, talklivipodcast.libsyn.com, where you'll find every single episode we've done over the last few years.
That's it for this week. Thanks again to all our listeners for tuning in. Let's hope for another great week following the Lothians' finest football team.
Livingston, oh Livingston, into the